Hello everyone, and welcome back to our Marketing Cloud API series. Now that we have seen how to set up the Postman collection, let's look at running a few of the REST API routes available in the collection. We'll see how to send out a triggered email and then check the status of the send, followed by how to send a transactional email message to multiple recipients using a transactional send journey and the REST API. Again, we can check the message send status for each of those recipients. We shall also look at how to retrieve the set of all the journeys in our org and then filter them by status. I'm sure you would want to see how to insert a contact into an active journey through the API, so we'll definitely cover that. And another related one is to show a list of all the journeys that a contact is in. And to finally wrap up, we will even create a contact and see if it shows up in our all subscribers list. Okay, so now that we have a good set of scenarios, let's get started. Okay, so for our first scenario, we're looking at a triggered send. And then if you look at the documentation, it's under REST reference. You need to go under messaging. There's a request here called send email. Okay, so this refers to a triggered send, and then you can see the full route details here. And then for the URL, it actually requires one of these parameters, either the object ID or the key. For our case, we're going to use the key, which is the external key of that triggered send. Okay, and then the JSON parameters, you will see that the to object is required along with the email address and the subscriber key. And there's a good example down here as well. We will customize this to add in our own data when we do the request from the Postman collection. Okay. And if we scroll down, we will see that the response, when we send it out, we will get a recipient send ID in this format. Okay, so we can use this to get the status of the send. Usually when it's immediately sent out, it will come back as queued. But then if you want to check the status of that particular send at a later point in time, you can use this recipient send ID. So there's another request just below the send email called the get email delivery details. So for this the triggered send, you can use the same key, and then after the delivery records, you need to append this recipient send ID. So once you do that, it will actually send you the response back. If it's still queued, it will show queued, but if it's sent, then it will actually show that it was sent out. Now this is the triggered send that I've configured in Email Studio, and as you can see, this is the external key that we'll be using, 62883. And then I also have a triggered send data extension that I've configured to house the data for all the contacts that we are going to send this triggered send to. Okay, so the latest data that I have here is ending with the 25. I'm actually going to be using a data that ends in 22, which is not there in this data extension right now. So after we do the send, we can come and check if that record got added. One thing you need to make sure is that your triggered send definition should be active. That means it should be running. And then once you complete the request from Postman, you would see that the queued counter gets incremented. And then once it's completed, it will increment the counter in the completed column here. If there's an error, then it will actually show up under error as well. Okay, so now coming back into our Postman collection, under the REST APIs, go to the messaging folder, and the first one that you see here is the send email triggered send definition. So let's open that up, and you will see the subdomain and other variables are already configured from our previous videos, so we don't have to worry about that. We need to go in and enter the external key for our triggered send definitions. So here it's 62883, as we saw earlier from Email Studio, and then we need to replace the JSON body with the custom data that I have here. So let me copy that over. Okay, this one. Okay, so I've skipped the from part in the JSON payload because I want to use the existing one that's already there in the triggered send definition. So that's an optional parameter anyway, so I'm not going to use that. The only required one is the to object, and the address and subscriber key is something that is mandatory, so I've included that. I've also added in a few more additional attributes here that will actually be updated into the data extension. Okay, so as you can see here, the contact information uses the 22 sequence, which was not there in the data extension. So we will verify that later after the request has been successfully processed. Okay, so let's go ahead and send this out. Okay, so now we can see that the request was accepted successfully, and we got a recipient send ID. Okay, so we'll copy this recipient send ID, and the current status is queued, right? So let's go to the get message status here. Let's add the same external key for the transaction triggered send, then paste our recipient send ID here, and it will probably still show us queued. Let's go back to our email studio. Let's refresh and come back to our triggered send. And there you see that extra one now showing up under queued. So once this is processed and the email goes out, it will come under completed or errored. Okay, so I reran our get message status after a few minutes, and now it's actually changed from queued to send. So let's go back and confirm that it's actually reflecting now in the UI as well. Okay, so if you go back to triggered sends, yeah, now you see that it moved from queued into completed. Okay, and let's also go and check the data extension. Let's refresh that, and then let's see. Yeah, you will see the sequence 22 is now the last record that has just been updated. Okay, so our next scenario is a transactional email send, where we'll be using a transactional send journey and the REST API. Okay, so under the REST API reference, you need to go under transactional messaging. The earlier one was triggered send, which is under messaging. So this scenario is under transactional messaging. And then under email, you will see one called send a message to multiple recipients. Okay, so in this one, you will see a few JSON payload parameters that are required, the definition key of the transactional send journey, and the recipient information that you need to provide. Okay, so as you can see here, there's a good example as well that we can use. I have some custom data that I'll be using in the JSON payload when we send the API request from the Postman collection. Okay, now going into Journey Builder, when you click on the new journeys, you have different options, and then you will see this new one right here called transactional send journey. So this is what I have used to create a transactional send journey, as you can see here. And then it has a event definition key, which I defined over here, and that's what we will use in our API request as well. It also has a data extension that I've configured tied to this particular transactional API event. So if I go here, it has a bunch of records that I've sent in the past. So I'll just refresh and confirm that we have all the records updated. So 23 is the last sequence. We'll be using 26, 27, and 28 in our data. So hopefully we should be able to see that once the API request completes successfully. Okay. So in Postman, we need to go under the transactional messaging folder here, and under email, go to the last one here that says email send a message to multiple recipients. So once we open that up, you'll see there's no URL parameters that you need to give, but it's the body that we need to configure. So I'm going to replace this with the custom data that I have. Let me just copy that over. We'll see. And Control V. Okay, and as you can see here, this is the definition key of the transactional send journey that we configured in the UI. And I've specified 3 different contacts here, 26, 27, and 28. And then we can see if these actually get pushed into the journey, and then if we can see those in the data extension as well. Okay, so I'll go ahead and send this out now. Okay, got accepted here, as you can see, and then there's a message key as well. Like so, for each of the contacts you get a message key, and then you can use this message key to actually go and check the status as well, right? So there's something here called email get message send status for recipient. So if I go to this particular API route, I can go ahead and append the message key that we just got from the previous API request. If you click on send, it will give you the details. So as you can see, it was the first one was the 26, right? So it will give you the details of that particular send, and it says that the transactional send events email sent. Okay, if you want to try it for one of the other message key as well, so this probably would be for the 28. Okay, so let's go and try that by changing the message key here, and let's see if it'll actually bring up the 28. Okay, there you see the contact is updated now for the 28. Okay, so we'll go to the UI and then look at the contact, the data extension here for the transactional send journey, And as you can see, the 26, 27, and 28 actually got added to this particular data extension that's related to the transactional send journey. Okay. So our next scenario is in journeys. So we will try to get a collection of all the journeys that we have in our org. Okay, and so for this you have to go to the REST reference under interaction. There's one called search journeys. So if you come here is the get interaction v1 interactions. As you can see here, there's no required parameters. They're all optional. Okay, so if you want to filter the API request to return for certain statuses, you can use the status parameter as well. Okay, so we'll go and check this in Postman. So in Postman, you need to go under the interactions folder here, under journeys. You need to look at the one that says get interactions. Okay. As you can see, there is no URL parameters currently specified. So if I go ahead and run this, and there's no body required as well for this one. If I go ahead and run this one, it will actually return all the latest versions of the journeys that I have in the current org. Okay, so it actually returned 22 different journeys that I have in the org that's available. Now, if I want to actually add different statuses, filter by different statuses for the interactions, I can go ahead and add that under the parameters here. So I will just type in status, and I can probably give status like stopped. Okay, so if I say show me all the journeys that are currently having a status of stopped, it will go ahead and fetch me those information. So right now I have 8 journeys that are in the stopped status. So if I want it as draft, so let's see if I can get a different data set now. So I get 13 different journeys that are in draft mode. I can even check for paused. Okay, so that's the new status, is because now you can actually pause journeys. So right now there's none that is actually paused. Now if you give a wrong status, right, something that's invalid, it will actually give you a great message saying that the status that you provide is invalid. And also you can actually it'll give you the list of all the valid statuses that you can use. So as you can see here, these are the different set of valid statuses that you can use to filter your journeys. Okay, so now let's look at how to inject a contact into an active journey. Okay, for that, under interaction, there's something called fire the event. I know the name is a little misleading. You would have expected to see inject a contact, but the one that actually is related to that is the fire the event, and that's post interaction v1 events. Okay, so in this one you will see that you need to provide the contact key and the event definition key, and you can see the details over here as well, and we will see that shortly in our Postman set. Now for this to work, you need to actually configure a API entry event source journey here, and it will have a event definition key, which is what you will actually use here in this one, and then the contact key is the one that the ID for the unique ID for that particular contact. Okay, so we'll be using this event definition key in our Postman API request. Okay, and then there's also a data extension associated with that, this one here, and you can see like the last trainer that I have is 006, so I'm going to be adding 7 and 8. So once we finish the Postman request, we'll come back and see if those 2 records got added. Okay, so back in Postman, under the journeys folder, we'll now go to fire entry event. And as you can see here, there's nothing that we need to give in the URL parameters, but under the body, we'll go ahead and add our specific contact details that we want to push into the specific API event source journey that we saw earlier. So let me go ahead and copy and paste our data here. So as you can see, the first contact that I want to push in is trainer07. This is the API event definition key of that particular journey that we saw earlier. Let's go ahead and run this, and then we will get an event instance ID back with the 201 created if it's successfully pushed into the journey. Okay, I'll try with one more data set. So let me just copy that over. And now you will see that in this particular trainer 007, I did not include a couple of data fields like the date of birth and the gender. So I'm going to add that now in the next contact that I have here, which is 008. As you can see here, I've added the date of birth and the gender attributes. So I want to see like if they're optional fields or optional fields for that data extension. If you add them, how it gets updated into the data extension as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and send this request. Okay, this one got created as well. Now we'll go and check our data extension to see if 007 and 008 got created successfully. Okay, so we're back in our data extension here. Let me go ahead and refresh this one. So as you can see, 007 and 008 got added. The first one, we did not specify the date of birth or the gender, so those two attributes did not come across. The last one, we did add those additional attributes, so they came across correctly. Okay, so if you go back to our journey, after some time, if you refresh it, you should be able to see that there's actually 7 people that actually came into the journey. And then they will flow through based on the wait delays over here. Okay, so I just refreshed the journey, and now you can see the 7 people here. Earlier was 5, so the 2 new people that we added just got inserted into the journey. And after the 5 minutes, they will be getting the email, and after that, they will be exiting from the journey. Okay. Now there's also a REST API request which can actually help you find the list of journeys that a contact is in. Now this one is actually in the documentation is listed under contacts and not under journeys. So you can specify a list of contact keys here, and it will actually tell you which of them actually are in what journeys, if they're in any active journeys. Okay, so if you go back to our Postman collection here, under journey, and this one in Postman collection, it's under journeys and not under contacts. If you scroll down, you will see get the list of the journeys that the contact is in. Okay, so if you come here, you can see this. There's no URL parameters, but if you go to the body, you can give the contact key list. So let me go ahead and give the list of contact keys that we want to check. So we will include a few that actually got exited, and then those are all in the journey as well. So 7 and 8 are the ones that we recently just pushed into the journey. So let's see if it'll come back. Okay, great. So you can see that 7 and 8 are currently in 2 active journeys, and then 5 and 6 are not found because they've already exited from the journey, or they were never entered into any journey. Okay. So how do you know which journeys that these contacts are belonging to? So you have to use this definition key. So you can copy this definition key here, and then if you go to get interactions journeys by ID, click on that, and then here you will see it's asking for a journey ID, right? So but we don't have the journey ID, we only have the key, right? So what you can do is you can actually put it as key : that particular key, and then if you click on this one, you will get the actual journey by the key. Okay, so as you can see here, this was the actual ID. If you had the ID, you could specify that directly, but if you have the definition key, then you can actually specify that here, and then you will get the details of the journey that particular contact was in. Okay, so for our last scenario, we're going to create a new contact, and then we'll see if it gets added to our email subscribers list. Okay, so the documentation here is under the REST reference under contacts, create contacts. So as you can see here, you need to provide an attribute set. So there's different contacts that you can create. You can either create it for Email Studio, you can create it for Mobile Connect or Mobile Push, or the Group Connect, right? So we will use it for the Email Studio, for which you need to provide the attribute set for email addresses and the email demographics. Okay, so these are actually profile attributes that you will see under Email Studio for each subscriber. Okay, so let's go back into our Postman collection here. So this is going to be under contacts. Let's do a create contact here. So we don't have to specify in the URL, but then we have to go and add the JSON payload. So I'm going to copy paste the data that I have here. Let me overwrite this data. Okay, so this is the subscriber that I'm trying to add. Now before I add this, let's go ahead and check if this particular subscriber is already existing in our email studio all subscribers list. So this is the subscriber here. As you can see, it's 22504-2021. Okay, just let's verify that here. 22504-2021. Okay, so when I click on find now for this particular subscriber key, let's see if there's any subscriber with that particular key already existing. Okay, so it says 0 subscribers found. So after we run our REST API request, we should be finding that one subscriber has been added to the all subscribers list. Okay, so let's go back to Postman here, verifying that we have set the email address, the HTML enabled flag to true, last name, first name, the email opt-in flag is true, the gender is male. Okay, so let's go ahead and click send. Okay, so it's been accepted, and then we can see that the data is correctly showing that it's a new contact key. Now let's go back to our email studio here and repeat our find. And this time we will see that there's one subscriber that has been found for this subscriber key. Let's go ahead and open it up and check the attributes to verify if the data came across correctly. Okay, so as you can see, the first name, the last name, the gender is correct. Both the email and the opt-in flags have been set to true as well. So I hope these scenarios gave you all an idea of how to go through the Marketing Cloud API documentation, and then also use the Postman collection to try out the different REST API routes. Thank you for watching.